Wednesday, Maize and Blue Review. Good afternoon, Michigan football. Here he is, Jim Scarcelli. Scar, did you get a new chair?
No, it's same old creaky, nasty sounding chair. Same old thing, just like me, old and creaky. But I got my T-shirt on. Then I just got this. Who's got it better than us?
Oh, Nobody. There you go. There it is. Oh,
a friend of mine got me that shirt. Denny, I have heard that line since 1985.
Is that right?
I mean, I told you I played with Jim, and I knew the folks, but the line I remember hearing more than any of them was the enthusiasm unknown to mankind. That's the line I remember going way back with Coach Jack. But rocking the shirt, and it's all good, man. We're counting down, getting ready.
Harbaugh had a lot of sayings, but I think those are the two most popular. But he was full of them. And at the beginning, when he said, who's got it better, there were a lot of people that were like, we do. But at this current point, after last year, I think everyone agreed that it was nobody. So, it ended up working out. It ended up working out for Michigan and the prophet, Jim Harbaugh.
Danny, I had a word of the day every day for my football team. It's just leaders do that. You just, what are you talking about? Attitude, team, discipline, carpe diem. Jim, I'm sure, had something different every day.
Yeah, I can remember when he was at Stanford. He had written down a few of his sayings. He was able to mold them into, even if it wasn't true, even if there wasn't, so he'd say, what this means, it actually, whatever he wanted it to mean, but, it was effective and it worked. So good for him. That's going to continue on, even out there in LA with him as head coach of the Chargers. Speaking of Jim Harbaugh, he is part of a new college football book that is going to be released this summer. Today, there was an excerpt of said book released, and I got a little portion of it. We will read it, and it's not that long. We'll see where Scar lands on at least the few sentences that was out there released to the public. Very popular film diagnosis from Jim Scarcelli all the time. He goes to Texas, who Michigan will see on the 7th of September. Everyone looking forward not only to the start of the season, but then certainly a real non-conference game, and that's going to take place. We'll get to that. But Scar, the last we talked, we weren't talking so much about the transfer portal, but since we last talked, Michigan was reeling in more and more transfers, and you're here to tell us what you think about Michigan and all the different transfers that they were able to bring in.
Denny, I was really big on Mangum. I watched that kid play at Michigan State, and I thought he was a really, really good player. I know some people thought, it's still not quite Rod Moore, but I think this kid is really, really good. He's tough, he's fast, he's athletic, he's got experience now. And that's a huge pickup. And we really solidified the secondary, our secondary with depth. I mean, I watched the spring game, and I went into practice, and I thought there were a lot of good players there, but they obviously felt the need to bring some people in. And we got the kid from Tennessee. We got guys in. So there's a lot of competition there. You may see some people leave maybe before the season. I don't know, but anyway, I'm happy we got Mangum big time, because that gives us another guy with a lot of and the kid from Albany, to go out and find that kid, that's a guy that's going to put some competition in there, man. McBurrow and Hill, and now you got Hall in there, boy. This guy's got some experience, and the kid from UNLV is a veteran. He came into Ann Arbor last year and played. So the coaches felt we need players there, and they got proven guys. And I don't know how many of them have any. I know Mangum has 2 years of experience to play. So anyway, I feel real good about it. I like seeing that. Gives us depth, gives us competition, and it's what college football is now, man. You got to beat out the guys in your class when you're ready to become a starter, and then now you got to beat out guys that they might think about bringing in. So it's a constant battle in college football, unless you're at Clemson. He's the only guy that doesn't believe in it, Denny. I don't know how Dabo's going to do it. I admire it. I respect it. From the standpoint of of a guy that went through it and said, okay, if I beat out this guy, I'm the guy. Just don't let nobody underneath me beat me out. And that's still kind of happening at Clemson. And he can use that in recruiting. That I'm not gonna let you go 2-3 years and pay your dues and you're ready to go, and then here comes some guy from wherever. So he's the only guy that's not bringing transfers in.
Yeah, we were, I don't know, singing that tune 2 years ago, that you had to be careful about the guys that you brought in. What about guys that have developed, that have been around here? What about the loyalty? And then Harbaugh went out there and, just brought in 10 guys last year. And they already had a bunch of those guys that were on the offensive line that were waiting their turn. And, Harbaugh brought 3 more in, and all of them ended up contributing and starting and different ways. And then now this year, Sharon Moore, even with a slow start because of the transition and everything, Moore is up to 9. So, 10 last year, 9 this year. There you go. So that's part of it. Michigan jumped right in. If 2 years ago, if you'd have said, maybe Michigan is going to be like Dabo, and I heard Dabo say, there's just not any guys out there that are good enough to start for us. That's why he's not going out there. So he feels pretty good in the guys that he has. But depth, experience, injuries, all those things, I don't think that's going to work out for him. But I don't think anybody does. But the recruiting aspect is interesting. Will guys want to go there thinking that they won't be hitting the transfer portal and they'll feel a little bit safer?
Yeah, it's got to be a factor, in recruiting, because I think if I talked to some guys, some dads of guys that are recruited by a lot of different people, and it's one of the big things they're evaluating. There's a huge difference between going to play for Coach Prime and going to play for Dabo. Okay, there's a huge difference. One guy's got a big time transfer philosophy, the other guy doesn't. So, you'd be crazy to think that. And then most of the people are somewhere in between. But you got to evaluate that as a high school coach and as a parent of a kid getting recruited. You got to know what advice to give kids.
Yeah, if you're a player that could be a fringe player, that could be a comfort to you. I think most of these guys, certainly the 5 stars for sure, and probably the very highly thought of 4 stars, they're like, it doesn't matter wherever I go, I'm going to be starting. Nobody's going to be passing me up. I don't know how many guys go in thinking, yeah, I'll just hit the transfer portal if things aren't working out. It's the option once they get in there, but who knows? It changes so much. Maybe some of the guys are thinking, I'll go in and get my money now, and then if I can spend that, and it's only a 1 year, I could be a free agent again next year. I could be hit free agency twice, and then I could go pro. I don't know how they're thinking.
I thought it was interesting. I heard one MAC coach, the MAC conference, he's using that as a recruiting tactic. Say, look, play for me for 2 years. I'll get you to the Big Ten. Come play for me in the MAC. I'll get you to the Big Ten. He's using it as a method to recruit players. So it's interesting how, you got to find a way to, this thing is happening fast, man. Who's going to stay ahead of the curve?
I don't know how the MAC is even going to be able to field football teams with the amount of money that they're going to have to pay when the settlement comes through. At least the initial one, the amount that the group of 5 have to pay towards it, the amount of money they have coming in, they have to pay as much or more than the Big Ten, which seems pretty wild to me. I was listening to the Ohio Bobcat coach today. He said, yeah, they went through spring football. They lost so many players. And then after spring football, they lost 5 starters. So just since spring football, they've
lost. They transferred after spring football?
Yeah, so.
Well, he's got to be picking up the guys that leave the big schools then. It's a trickle down, trickle up, man. Those guys got to go somewhere. All them guys ain't going to be, it's going to level out.
No doubt. And if you're the MAC, you can go down and you could look at Albany and those other schools, and you could pick from them. So
that's right. You get the guys that can't play for Indiana, Michigan, Purdue. You get those guys that are upset and got hurt feelings and they want to leave, and so it's capitalism, man.
Yeah, can't sit around crying about it.
That's right.
All right. So Scar, I want to show you something that just happened today. At first, I want to tell everyone that we would love to see you over on the Maize and Blue Review. And you like recruiting, you like the transfer portal, you like Michigan talk all day and all night. Well, this is the place for you. Go to michigan.rivals.com, join up the Maize and Blue Review. We will see you over there on the Den. All right. A book, college football book. Armin Katayan, John Talty have come together for a book that is going to be released in August, but they put an excerpt out today. It's called The Price, What It Takes to Win in College Football's Era of Chaos. Let me read you a couple sentences from this excerpt today, Scar. You can tell me what you think of it. During a two-way getaway with his wife, Sarah, on Coronado Island off the coast of San Diego, Harbaugh unloaded to longtime friend Todd Anson. He told Anson he wanted to remain at Michigan, but believed Ward Manuel, no matter his public pronouncements, was not the advocate he needed in his corner, particularly in front of the Board of Regents. He also raged against Big Ten Commissioner Tony Batiti, who before the 3-game Big Ten suspension had promised to meet Harbaugh in Ann Arbor and brief him on what the conference was doing, only to stand him up. And Batiti did not return request for the interview for this book, according to Katayan or Talty. So there we go. That's a little bit to sink your teeth in. Gar, do you believe that that Jim Harbaugh wanted to remain at Michigan, but did not have his athletic director as much of an advocate as needed? What do you think?
Well, I mean, it's a question of do you want to believe Jim on his comments out the door on his way to San Diego? He did nothing but promote Michigan, wish him success, and those were the words he said as he left. And now you've got a close associate of Harbaugh saying something different. Denny, I beat this up. It doesn't do any good for Michigan for divisive, Todd Anson. If you're for Michigan, if you really want what's best for Michigan, we need to unify and unite and let Ohio State have chaos. Let them be stabbing each other and knifing each other. Let's have East Lansing looking to fire their coach every 3-4 years. Let them have the division and chaos within. Okay, do I believe? I don't know who to believe, man. Doesn't Jim said what he said. The book is going to say something otherwise. Maybe it's true he was upset with Batiti, but
I believe that.
Maybe we'll know in 20 years when we hear it come out of Jim Harbaugh's mouth when he's when he writes his own book. Then maybe we'll know, Denny. But otherwise, it's just divisive. It doesn't help Michigan. We need to be unified. We've got good coaches hired now in every program in our athletic department. Just, let's move on, man.
Yeah, I believe 100% that Batiti and that Harbaugh doesn't like Batiti. There's no doubt about that. I also believe 100% that Harbaugh did not want his linebackers coach fired when that happened. So I believe those two things. I also believe that Harbaugh really thought if he was going to stay around, and there was, the idea, I mean, he wasn't 100% sure he was going to get an NFL job, that he really wanted an athletic director and president to fight and get down to the trenches with him. And it took an all-out effort, according to Harbaugh, that it was going to be, they just had to be proactive and get after it all the time. And I believe that he didn't feel like that he had that 100% of everything that he wanted from the athletic department.
But Yeah, it sounds like that statement also indicated he wanted Ward maybe to fight the Regents a little more.
Yeah, right, right.
Because I had heard that there was some issues with the Regents and some things that bothered Jim a little bit. I'd heard that.
Yeah, I believe those things.
Yeah.
I also believe what Harbaugh said in 2020. Now, I thought people like to say, well, look at the last couple of years, he was flirting with the NFL. I even think after the pandemic season, the famous when Harbaugh had his salary cut, that I believe that he would have been gone to the NFL if a team would have shown him interest. I think that the Chicago Bears would have hired Jim Harbaugh after that pandemic season if they didn't make the playoffs. They would have fired their coach and they would have hired Jim Harbaugh. Nope, Harbaugh had not played for a football team. The Bears, it was his longest tenured football team that he played for, the team that drafted him and his affinity for Chicago and Ditka and everything else. I think he would have taken that job, but they made the playoffs and no other team was interested. He didn't have an agent. He wasn't out there acting like, hey, here I am. So he had to come back a little bit with his tail between his legs, and he had to take that, the reduced salary that a lot of people thought, was the impetus to push him out. But after that, he was asked about, flirtations and everything else. He said, judge me by my actions. That's what he said. And I thought, okay, well, I'll do that. Well, the next year, whatever happened with Minnesota, he was definitely, he had one foot out the door, however close you think he was to taking the Minnesota job. Then he said afterwards, I'll never, whatever the quote was, I'm so happy. You can't outdo happiness. I love it here. The next year, he interviewed for 2 jobs, the Panthers job and the Broncos job. And, behind the scenes, he had Michigan fans believing, he was just doing that to get raises for, his assistants. And people bought that. I didn't say hook, line, and sinker. Maybe it's true, but I had to look at that like, And then, of course, then there was the Chargers thing every year. The guy's out there trying to go to the NFL, like, no, I want to be here. I want to be here. I want to be at Michigan. And then when he's out the door blaming somebody else, I mean, I'm not buying that. I wish him good luck. Michigan's fine. They're going to be able to do things. I still like Jim Harbaugh. And, he's the greatest coach Michigan ever had. So there you go. Good luck to him. But all of this stuff with Anson and Ward Manuel and back and forth, I do find the interesting part, Scar, and I'll give you the final word on it, is that you get like a half the Michigan fans believe in this and half the Michigan fans believe in that. But it all goes back to that season where Ward ended up, he could have easily, it was a very reasonable decision to say, we are moving on from Jim Harbaugh after 6 seasons. They hadn't beat Ohio State, whatever you thought, they could have moved on. But Ward Manuel, didn't. He hired him back and, got him with another contract. That was a great move, however you want to look at it, by Ward Manuel. But the very, so you can say, wow, good job by Ward Manuel. He brought Harbaugh back and look at these.
Well, maybe he wanted him to quit, Danny. I mean, you want to blow him for telling a guy to take a pay cut. A lot of guys will do that, hoping the guy will quit.
Well, fine. Okay, Scar, whatever the thing, I'm going to go with what happened. What happened is he was giving him a job. He would have been working for the Ravens as an analyst or something. Well, nobody was giving him a job.
Yeah. Anyway, you know what, man? It's there's a lot of views on it, and I wonder if Jim gave Anson the okay to contribute to that book. Is Anson just running wild? Because obviously those guys are connected. Anson and Harbaugh are connected. So, is it something how does Jim benefit from having this out there? He gave a positive message about Michigan. He loves Michigan. He wants Sharon to succeed. And then, what does this accomplish? So, anyway, I'm going to be, I'm on the voice of let's move on. Go Chargers, go Michigan.
Go Chargers, go Michigan. Okay,
that's where I am, then.
Did you hear Sharon Moore say something? You sent me a text because
we had our website posted some of his comments, and he talked about the things he's dealing with as a first-time head coach, and really, the things he's saying, I'm seeing. He's really happy with his coaching staff. I love seeing that. You know, he had one guy let him down, Scruggs, but he's got a staff that's working together. He's fired up about Wink, and he hit the jackpot with Wink. And he, you know, all the things that I know are important to me, he wanted to maintain the system. He wanted to maintain the terminology defensively. And the players know it, but it works. Not so much that the players know it or all this, whatever. It works. It's proven that it works 3 years in a row. So, but I also know that as he's going to get better, Denny. His first year will be okay, right? And he's going to go through it. But his second and third year, he'll have, so many things will come a lot easier for him, decisions. But he's made a lot of, great decisions from what we're seeing so far. But I just know me as a first-year head coach, I was a totally different guy like year 3. That's when everything is like, okay, you really got a handle on media, assistant coaches, recruiting, organization, structure, what you want to do with the practice schedule. He talked about doing some tweaking with the practice schedule, and you do that as a head coach, even though you replaced the guy that won a national championship. You still might have some subtle tweaks you want to do, but he don't plan on blowing up nothing. He obviously understands, that those are some of the things he continues to say. But my point is, he'll be better next year, and he'll be even better as he continues to grow as a head coach.
I like that point of view. I do think that he is a first-time head coach, although he's in a unique situation more than any other first-time head coach that I've ever seen, in that he coached 3 games in actually 4 games in a real pressure cooker last year, and he had to make the calls not only as the head coach on game day, but also as the offensive coordinator. And he did deal with the media and the scrutiny and the questions that it came when the lights were the brightest with an undefeated team. So he does have that experience. And people have a hard time putting what he did last year in that 3-game run in context, because a lot of people are like, oh, he's got those 3 wins, he's got all that. And other people are totally dismissing it. That means nothing. No, he was the head coach on the sideline, and he was making the calls. He was going for it a bunch on 4th downs. He had to deal with the refs. He had to have the headset on, where he's then dealing with both sides of the ball. I mean, those are not small things. It's not every.
The thing. Listen, my feelings were that some of that stuff is overrated. The culture, when people keep talking about culture, that's what a head coach every day talks to his team, talks with his coaches. You're the guy that dictates culture every single day when you talk to your team. What's acceptable, what's not acceptable on campus, in the weight room, in the practice field. You talk every day about culture, and how you present to your team before practice, after practice, and to your coaches. And it's constant. And that's where he's going to really, the kids are going to see that. We don't know nothing about that. But
he at least got his foot wet. That's what I would think, he got his foot wet, but Jim was there all week. Jim was there at the hotel. He was there at the hotel before they went up, and he gave the speech at the hotel before they left the campus in. I hear you, but I'll tell you this. There have been many coaches, and they don't say it about Andy Reid anymore because he's won a couple Super Bowls. But prior to winning Super Bowls, when he was at Philly, he was undressed every season about, this guy's a great coach. He can do it all during from August to September. But when he gets to the playoffs, he doesn't he folds up like a cheap suit. He's not a game manager. Lions had Jim Caldwell as their head coach. Everybody liked and respected Jim Caldwell, but on game day, he froze up. He wasn't good at challenges. He did running the timeouts, the clock. I mean, those are things that you have to do on game day. And what Moore did, if Moore was doing it against East Carolina and Rutgers and stuff, he could say, this is going to be a little bit different when it's Ohio State, or on the road against Penn State, or on the road against Maryland. Those were the games that he went in there and rang the bell and made all the right decisions. So good for him.
No, I hear you, Denny. I'm just telling you that there's a lot going on, that he's really proven himself now every day that we just don't know. And those things are so important, because the second in command is nothing. I've been second in command. You're nothing. You don't dictate culture. The head guy dictates culture. He dictates everything. The sun rises and sets with the leader, Danny, not number 2, 3, 4. Remember that. Let me just say a couple other things that I got in my notes here.
All right.
Gene Smith, just got to mention it. The old washed up.
Washed up.
Well, we beat him the last 3 years, Danny.
Yeah, that's right.
We beat him. What's his job? What's the athletic director's job at Ohio State? Number one job you have is to hire a football coach that'll beat Michigan. Hire a football coach that will beat Michigan. Well, you failed 3 years in a row. You failed. Ward Manuel and Jim Harbaugh beat you. So now you're going to chirp about some kind of asterisk. I just want to point it out. We beat you 3 years in a row. You sound like a little weasel. We beat you. You didn't do your job. Just want to point that out. I don't know. You got a comment about that?
I'll echo your comments. I think
I just wanted to point it out.
It doesn't surprise me. I mean, he was asked about should there be an asterisk, and what is he supposed to say? No, Michigan won it fair and square. Of course, he's going to say something like that.
Well, he had one of his plants ask that question. Well, that whatever.
I got news for you. Every member of the media at Ohio State is a plant.
Okay, well, there you go.
They're all super fans.
They threw the softball up there for him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they did.
Danny, real quick, I wanted to give Scar's thoughts on the ranking of the defensive position groups. I didn't have it on our notes, but the defensive position groups, I think our linebacker group is the most solid. We have 2 really good starters. So the way I'm looking at the position group is who are the starters and then the depth. So I think the linebacker group has 2 really good starters with Barnum and Hausman. And then we have 4 or 5 guys that can play in there. I just think we have really good linebacker starters in depth. The second group was not as high as they are now for me. I have our secondary as our second group that I have the most confidence in because of the depth we're bringing in Mangum. Our safety position is as good as anybody in the conference. So I have the secondary ranked number 2. I have our edge position ranked number 3. I really like what I'm seeing from TJ Guy. I think our starters all of our positions, our starters are really, really solid. It's good enough to win a Big Ten championship. And I feel that about our edge position. But I really like what I saw from TJ Guy and some of them other young guys. Now, the D-line, that's why I think they're looking at adding a transfer there. They're seeing some things. I see Pierce, Brandt, Etta. I see big, talented, athletic kids. But they really have to have a great summer, and they really have to just continue to get better with technique. So I have the D-line as a group. If there's any group that I'm kind of concerned, it's not the starters, it's depth. And how good are the backups going to be? Is Etta going to be a guy? Is Brandt? And some of those guys, Danny. I just wanted to rank them. Linebackers, a lot of confidence. DBs, edges, and then the D-line, a lot of questions to be answered.
I feel like we could bring 3 or 4 people on and give everyone a position group, and every one of the people could make an argument for their group. If I was making an argument for the defensive line, I'd say Michigan has the best 2 defensive tackles in the country. Or they certainly have with the best pair. They were that 1 and 2, although Graham, I think, is 1, and Grant's certainly in the top 10. So they're doing great there. But your point, I think Rayshon Benny got hurt in the Rose Bowl. He might not be ready to go for the start of the season. And if you look, you could say you have him penned in or penciled in as a starter in that 3-4 next to Graham and Grant. So you're talking about somebody who's got very limited starts, or very limited even snaps, and talking about potentially having to start. Who knows? Maybe Benny will be ready to go by Texas. Maybe he'll be ready to go against the Fresno State. But so I could see that unproven, and then with an injury in there as well, that I could see why they would be looking for some depth.
Yeah, Danny, one of many things I learned from the great coach Schembechler is the emphasis he put on the second string guys. You know, it was all about depth, man. You have to develop that. And then when you coach, you understand it. You lose a guy. I get it. Mason Graham's as good as anybody. First round draft pick. I know he can play it, but what happens if he smashes his finger up again like last year? Who knows what's going to happen? You got to have guys that we put in there that you feel confident with.
Yeah. Kind of what was his injury?
He doesn't have an injury. I'm just saying you have to. He hurt his what did he hurt his thumb last year, Denny?
I don't know. Remember he had his hand all wrapped up. He was playing around with
yeah. Hey, how about this, Denny? You got the kid. How about this? You got Jaden Rashida, the kid that was recruited by Florida and committed over there. He's suing them for $14 million for NIL. They didn't come through on the NIL. Did you read about that?
Yes, I'm keeping tabs on that.
That's the kid that was at Arizona State, I believe, and now he's at Georgia. But that's interesting. $14 million. He's suing Florida for reneging on an offer there. Just thought that was interesting.
Be interesting. I think Florida would do well just to try to settle that. I don't think you want to be getting into your collectives and discovery with what's going on. That'd be my advice to the Gators. I don't know if they have to give them $14 million, but a couple million for Rashada and kind of move on with that story. You don't want that one. There'd be a lot that could come out with Florida. I would predict a settlement with that particular story.
Danny, this is another nil situation I thought was interesting. I wanted to point out, you had a really, really good player, this Tyler Barron kid. Highly recruited, played 4 years at Tennessee. He wants to get his payday. So he goes to Louisville, second semester. He doesn't go through spring football, though. Okay? But he signs with Louisville. They pay for his college, second semester. He doesn't go through spring football. But meanwhile, he's negotiating. So he's on campus. Louisville's paying for his schooling. He's got Ole Miss, Alabama, Texas A&M, bunch of guys offering him, and he's got them negotiating against each other. He ended up just recently committing to Miami. So I felt that was an interesting deal. Big time kid, proven player at Tennessee, commits to Louisville, gets them to pay for his schooling for a semester, tells them, I'm just over here kind of hanging out negotiating, and now I'm going to Miami and play for the Canes and all the big ballers down there with their big pocketbook. So it's an interesting world, man.
Well, it's fascinating. Sorry, you're somebody that knows about being a student athlete, the class that you come in with, you're probably still friends with the vast majority of the guys that you came in with your recruiting class. You love those guys like you're your brothers, and you go through everything as teammates. And, it's not Pollyanna is what I'm talking about, but you get where you're at now. The coaches will move on you and process you. And if you're not in the transfer portal, you can't get in there till December the 4th. They'll bring in guys with maybe the idea of leapfrogging you, and the players now they can start playing this game too. They're over here talking to somebody else. Meanwhile, they got their hand out over here. I mean, it is, they need a collective bargain. They need to get this together. So it's not where, one's over here and one's over there, where they get these contracts where they're out in front, where everybody's not a free agent nonstop. That's going to be the next thing that.
Danny, you made a great point that just got me thinking, because we're supposed to have, I heard talk that Michigan football is going to have a reunion possibly prior to the season, or it's bringing back all. We did this in the Brady Hoke years. We did it on the Rich Rod years. Every 5 years, we would bring back all the former players would get together in Ann Arbor. It was great. I loved it as a former player to talk to those guys that played in the 60s and the 50s. And some of the guys were still alive in the late 40s. And, I just used to love being, there was 800,000 guys there. It was awesome. The point you're just making, 20, 30 years. So when we have our reunion, we all have a common experience. Maybe it was different coaches, but we're all Michigan, man. We did 4 or 5, some years at Michigan. Maybe it was maybe it was Schembechler, Moeller, Carr, Rich Rod, whoever, Brady, but I'm drawing a blank. Who was before Bo? What was his? Elliott, Bump Elliott, some of those guys. Anyway, we had a common experience. These dudes now, they're going to come back 30 some years from now. It's like they got no, some of these schools, what's a Colorado reunion going to be like in 30 years? You know what I mean? Who's coming back? Anyway, you just had me thinking about that common experience of tradition that guys go through that I'm really happy I'm a part of it at Michigan.
Sure. I think all those guys, though, would forego any of that stuff to get paid big money, rather instead of, just having a scholarship. They would do it. I can tell you, you bring up those reunions, and I obviously didn't play at Michigan, but when I was working in Ann Arbor, I got invited to one of those reunions, and the star of the Michigan football reunion was for a few years that I went in there, Scar?
Who's that?
It was a chef named Coop. Chef Coop. This guy had a cornbread and chili, and then he would make a clam chowder that, I only had, I think once or twice, the clam chowder, but that's what I remember about all those football reunions. Now you got to ask some of your friends there about the old Chef Coop. That guy, he must have ran off, must have had 2-3 Michelin stars and went off into the sunset, because that guy, with what he was able to do with, with the cornbread and chili, with the, the soup that he was making, that guy, there was nothing.
That's one thing I can say about any kind of Michigan football function that I've ever been a part of. We never left hungry. Always well fed.
Well, that's good. All right. Scar, are you ready to watch a little bit of this film?
Yeah, Denny, here's the thing about what I want to take a look at their spring game. Now, the coaches are going to look at, I'm just looking at it from, I know what things I used to do as a coach. You're going to look at those 12 games that they played, and you're going to study every single game. But you're going to look at the spring game too, because you got different players, and that's what you're going to size up. But what I'm looking at, Denny, if I'm coaching, because again, you don't know until you're looking at scheme, Denny. What is the guy's scheme? Because you don't know which players are what yet. What's he do against formations? What's his adjustments? What does he believe? What's his philosophy? So Wink is going to study the heck out of the guy. Actually, Kurt Flood, I think he's the offensive coordinator. He's the offensive. Remember Kurt? Is it Flood? Is that he was the old over at Rutgers?
I'd have to look it up. Kurt,
anyway,
that I know started out free agency in baseball for the Cardinals back in the 60s.
Yeah, his name is what Wink is studying for. He's got to get into the head of the offensive coordinator. Okay, and then the opposite for Campbell is get into the head of the defensive guy. So anyway, just looking at this first play. They're not going to come out with, you look at our first series, we had 2 tight ends in the game. Okay, here's number 3. This kid's a flat-out stud. This Ewers kid.
Yes,
okay,
yes, he is. I agree with you.
This kid's an accurate passer. He's a cool, calm guy. But here's the 3-3-5 on defense. So I think we can expect to see some of this stuff when we're in our one-back, 3-receiver formations. So 3-3-5, it's in the package for Texas. And those are the kind of things Campbell's going to be, that's what you're really studying. And Wink is looking at some of the formational stuff, trying to figure out players. But Ewers is the real deal. He didn't play great in this scrimmage. But when we play Texas, Denny, there's going to be, there's going to be great players, man. There's going to be 4 or 5. His name's Kyle Flood. What did I say? Kurt Flood?
Kurt Flood. If you were thinking free agency in baseball.
I'm thinking baseball from the 60s. Kyle Flood was at Rutgers. He's a pretty good offensive line coach. So here you look at this formation now. Texas brings in another tight end, and the defensive coach changed to a 4-man defensive front. So, these are the things that Campbell's looking at. how do you know what's the thought process of the defensive coordinator? And they're just you know, they're running a play in here. We run this kind of stuff. Moving along.
You know, Scar, if it was 3 years ago and you put up 3.35, I'd be laughing, talking about how Michigan's going to smash them all the way to, you know, back to Austin with a run game. But that's what TCU ran against Michigan.
Yeah, but you know, Denny, we did score a lot of points against TCU. Scoring points was not the problem against TCU. I mean, what did we score in that game? 40 points?
Yeah, but they turned the ball over a little bit.
I get it, but still, I mean, moving the football was not like going against Iowa's defense. You know what I mean? I'd rather go against TCU's defense than Iowa's defense.
Good point.
But you know, you're right. I mean, but again, okay. Anyway, this is a play we run, and just I'm looking at how they're defense. So now they're in more of a 3-3-5 package here. This is a 3-3-5 look. This is a linebacker here. This guy right here. And how are they defending a play that we run? So those are the things. And we run this play. And this little 3-3-5 defense stuffs it. So, again, you're looking at both sides of the ball.
I'm looking at their defensive tackles. Both of those guys went to the NFL last year. They were like one of the best teams against the run. They were terrible against the pass last year, which, you know, you'd think it doesn't mean that they're going to be the worst in college football against the pass and be great against the run. I mean, it's a different year, and they lost their two best run playmakers.
Yeah, but Denny, you know, we graduated Mozzie Smith, we graduated guys and Hinton, and you know, and guess what, man? We're Michigan, we reload. And you know what? Down here in Texas, they reload too, man. So anyway, this is some more stuff that I'm letting you get an understanding of how I would, as a coach, what I'm thinking. Okay, their defensive coordinator was at Boise State. He was with Peterson for like 15 years, the old Boise State guy. He was at Boise for a long time. Then he went with them to Washington. So, again, these are the things that Campbell and our offensive coaches, they're going to study this guy. What does he believe in? You know, the spring game is only going to tell you so much. And here's a real accurate pass by this quarterback.
Wow.
I mean, this is the stuff that's, you know, this is a small window and he throws a dime here. So stuff we got to deal with that, man.
Yeah. Well, you deal with that by keeping them off the field, running the ball.
Yeah. All right. Here's let's see how Texas aligns with. Now we bring in a Michigan formation. Here's a guard tackle on this side, guard tackle, tight end, and now they have 4 defensive linemen in the game. And let's see if they're running. They're just they're throwing the football. But obviously, no 3-3-5 against when 2 tight ends are in the game. And what are they doing on defense? Looks like a zone coverage. So yeah, you're trying to get a feel. How much zone does he run? How much man does he run? I thought this was interesting. Here it looks like they're in a spy. Here's 4 D linemen, 3rd and 9. This is the quarterback. Throwing a bad pass. So we want to see that. He didn't play great in this scrimmage. But I thought this was interesting that they have a defense where they have, looks like a spy there in their package. Because we'll probably see a lot of that kind of stuff with our quarterback. You know?
Yeah, agreed.
This is the superstar. This is the Manning kid. Let's take a couple snap looks at him.
Oh, the Manning kid.
You know, they want to talk about how great he is. I'm looking at some of these passes. Guys were wide open. But he moves pretty good. So, he, you know.
If his name was Arch Manningham, you know, he's not going to be thought about as much as he might be good, but he's a little bit.
Yeah, it does. You know, bloodlines are important to a lot of coaches, Denny.
Well, yeah.
You know, I think you know what you're getting from a work ethic. You know, it's not just. Listen, I was guilty of it as a high school coach. You know, if I had a younger brother of a kid that was a come from a great family, this, that, or you know what I mean? I knew what the kid was about. I'm going to make that kind of kid my quarterback, my linebacker. You know, if I have a pretty good idea about his bloodlines. So I think college coaches do the same thing, recruiting guys that they really, they know the family and kind of give an idea what they're getting. So to answer your question, all the hype that this kid got, I think it's just, it's like, okay, we know the bloodlines. We know how he's been coached, the kind of attitude he is. But
how about some of these thoughts, Scar? People are watching this film with you. He says the ball seems to float. The ball seems to float out of Arch Manning's hand rather than explode. You see that?
Well, what is that is that a bad thing? I mean, floating, you want a catchable ball. I'm trying to think of some guys that really threw, Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers was a guy that really, they say, threw a catchable ball. You know what I mean? Do you want to be?
He had a weird delivery, though.
Yeah, but do you want to be that guy that's overthrowing people or throwing it? Trying to knock a guy's head off, and they're not catching your ball. So you want to be able to throw a catchable ball. Anyway, here's a 4-man front defensively, zone coverage. This will be the last play. I just wanted to take a look at, unless you want to look at a little more viewers.
Is this big tight end they have? I remember for him from last year.
So anyway, they want to make a big deal about some of these stats in a game. I mean, Denny, I could throw this ball. Guy's wide open, and no one tackles him. So.
Yeah, well, he looked pretty good. I mean, Sark's got a proven track record. They did make it to the college football playoff last year. They do have one of the top quarterbacks returning in Quinn Ewers, so I can see why they're all excited down there.
Look, they got great players. They got a great fan base. They recruited. They went to Alabama last year and won.
They should have beat Alabama 2 years ago, and they would have if Quinn Ewers didn't get knocked out of that game.
You're right. Yeah. So here's another. This stuff though. I mean, what are they doing on defense? So I'm looking at this. They want to talk about the quarterback, but you like seeing mental mistakes from a defense. Guys that don't know what they're doing. Hopefully they do that in Ann Arbor in a couple months.
Ooh.
Okay, here's is this Ewers now again? Let's take one last series of Ewers.
All right.
And then we'll wrap. If you see something, Denny, you want to talk about, but we run this personnel group. There's 2 tight ends over here. Tight end.
Arch Manning looks like he's 12 years old.
So our coaches will be putting this stuff in, everything they're doing on offense. Our coaches have a good handle on it. But, you see that, you see athletes, you see the same kind of players Michigan has. We're not gonna just line up and out athlete these dudes.
No.
So Michigan is getting 3 points as of now at home.
Well, we had a question regarding the Longhorns, and now that you're talking about the spread, Mark says, what would you put the over and under at with Michigan and Texas?
I don't know how many points are going to be scored in that game. We just don't know about Michigan's offense quite yet.
I mean, 52.5.
Is it 52.5 now?
Oh, that's just those my instantaneous.
Danny, that sounds about right. That sounds about right. You got 2. Michigan ain't not going to give up many points. This will be the last play here. So, what are they doing here? So they're in look like a 3-3-5. This guy looks like a linebacker here. They're motioning in. I mean, we run this formation. Listen, they are not a fullback, 2-3 tight end team. We haven't seen it. So, but they're going to work a ton of that getting ready for Michigan. So their defense will see it, and we'll see a whole different type of deal when we come out in that. But they got to prepare for 7 offensive linemen too, Denny. 6. That's what I like about Michigan. And some of the things Sharon and Jim did is, even though you've ran it maybe one time last year, Texas has to prepare for 7 offensive linemen. They have to. They got to spend time on it. You can't say, well, let's hope they don't run it. No, you got to be ready to shove 5 defensive linemen in the game on the sideline if they bring 7 offensive linemen in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You just can't, you can't call timeout. So anyway, that's it, Danny. I just wanted to get an idea of what's going on with Texas. I see big, strong, fast athletes. I see a quarterback that we know he's going to be an accurate kid. He's average mobility. He's mobile enough. He's mobile enough. You see some 3-3-5 on defense. We got to get ready for that, man. Did Texas spy versus Alabama? That would be a great game, Mark, to look at, because if Alex Orji is our guy, we're going to do a lot of the same things Alabama did offensively. And you can afford, I think as a defensive coach, you may think that you can afford to dedicate a guy to being a spy, because, he's not going to dime you all around the field throwing the football. You know what I mean? But just like Jalen Milroe, when he steps up in the pocket, that's when you got problems. Then you got real problems when no one's open. So the question, did Texas spy versus Alabama? That would be a game that you want to look at. You're absolutely right, Mark. You're thinking like a coach. That's what you look at when you're coaching, is who's doing stuff similar to you. How did this guy defend your offensive formations? Because some guys are doing different stuff. It doesn't affect you. You know what I mean?
Might be something to look at this summer. I do recall Jim Harbaugh during Rose Bowl preparation saying that Alex Orji reminded him of a just less polished Jalen Milroe. Or he called Milroe a more polished Alex Orji. And that game,
Danny, that's what we're banking on, man. That we've got a Lamar Jackson, Jalen Milroe type guy that's just ready to cut him loose. And good luck defending Donovan and our passing game, and with the ability to run our quarterback. That's a beautiful thing, man.
Mark has an over and under of 49 on the Michigan. ESPN has 49 over and under. Okay, so there you go. I feel like Michigan get to 28 points, they can win that game. So they're going to win that game. I kind of feel like Michigan's going to win the game, being at home.
I would say going into that game, we can't give them 20 points.
What you say? Getting 3.
I would look at it just again. I don't know what our offense is going to do. I don't want to give them. I don't want to give them more than 20. They get up there 27, 28 points. Now you're asking our offense to score, 30, 31 points. A lot of new players, good players, but new players. We don't know what's going on at quarterback. So,
Scar, I want to say 2 things. One is that thanks to Quick Cut Video and Analytics for Scar being able to go through that film. And the other part is that I'm just looking, now that you got your new shirt, your brand spanking new shirt, who's got it better, and then you got that Valiant shirt up back there, and you got your whole wardrobe. Over the last couple of years, that maize and blue wardrobe looks like it's
nothing green in this house, Danny.
No,
nothing red, nothing green, nothing scarlet.
Everything's maize or blue.
We're all color coordinated over here.
I see that. It's looking good. All right, Vince, the countdown man says 101 days till kickoff. Let's show the world we are not going away.
Yeah, we got to have a great summer, and I don't know. I just want to hear. I want to hear that Tuttle is healthy and throwing the ball good. I want to see both him. I don't know who's going to be our first and second guy, but whoever it is, I'd like both of them to play in that first game, and I'd like both of them to play well against Fresno, Denny. I want to see two quarterbacks against Fresno. I'd like to see us. I'd like to see a 40 some to 6 game. You know, that's what I'd love to see. A game we just hammer them, we run it, we control it, we stuff them on defense. But we have two quarterbacks that at the end of the day, all the coaches, all the players, and all the Michigan fans feel real confident that we got two guys that can play. So if one guy gets banged up, you know, we got something going.
I hear you. And then if Michigan's able to beat Texas, Michigan's going to be in the top 10. They'll be in the top 5 then if they beat Texas, and away they go. And anybody that, you know, is doubting, and you understand, you know, you don't know a quarterback, all the different transition, but Michigan beats Texas. Everybody's going to be back on board. Everybody's going to be fired up, and everybody's going to be looking at Michigan as one of the best teams in the country if they take care of business at the Big House on September the 7th against Sark's Longhorn teams coming in.
You know, Mr. Denny, you know, I'm also thinking as a coach, you know, when you have 3 lamb chops like we've had to start the season, okay, now you got one. You have one, and then you got to be game ready. You have to be ready game 2, okay, to have your top 44 guys ready to go. You know, I'm wondering how that changes your thinking. If I'm coaching Fresno and I got East Carolina next week, I want to play a ton of guys in both those games. But playing Fresno this year, I've got to be like ready to have 44 guys. And I don't need 66, 80 guys ready for the Texas game. You know what I'm saying? So my thinking, I think, is a little different with Fresno following with Texas than Fresno following with East Carolina or UNLV. You know, let's play 80 dudes, 100 guys, and everybody's happy and everybody's partying on Saturday night. No, I think my focus is going to be a little different, and in my rotations might be a little leaner to get ready for Texas. So yeah, just a little thought that I think as a coach you have to think about.
That's it. Final thought is from Mark, who says Scar is a real Michigan man. I only want them to play well. If you do that and lose, an acceptable loss, but rare those losses would be.
Hey, Denny, I'm always going to be a focused on the Big Ten championship guy. I am always. That's just how I was raised. You know, the Big Ten championship. Win the Big Ten championship is number one. Okay, that's just still how I think about things. That's how I thought about it as a coach with my team. So, okay, if we stumble against Texas, it's a totally irrelevant deal on winning a Big Ten championship. You know, it might be, I don't know what kind of BS they might do if we had 3 8-1 teams. You know what I mean? What are you going to do if we got 4 8-1 teams and we lost to Texas and they played lamb chops? Or we beat Texas and we're 8-1. You know what I mean? That's the big mess with that championship game. What if we're 8-1, but we lost to Texas and they play 3 lamb chops, the other guys, and we get stiffed? You know what I'm saying?
Well, Scar, if Michigan is able to, if they win the Big Ten, obviously they're getting into the college football playoff, but I want to get in. So, you know, you want both, but, you know.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The non-league game is it a factor when they determine which 2 teams are going to play in the Big Ten championship? That's my question.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's the thing that we got to see. But hey, I like what I saw from Texas, Denny, from Michigan, and our ability to beat them. They got good players. They're well coached. They got a great quarterback. But I'd like our chances.
All right, Scar. Any final thought?
It's all good, Denny. Go blue.
There he is, Jim Scarcelli. Smash the like button. And also, we like those 5-star rankings. So go ahead, and if you're a listener to the podcast, give us one of those reviews, and thanks for the 5-star.